Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, April 1st, 2024. Jeff Carlson tells me that we don't have to go through the whole script for Zoom, thank goodness. So that being the case, we will, the first thing we will do is, I guess, a roll call and find out who we currently have. So I'll just go down the list that I have. Jesse? Okay. Dave Franzuto?
Here.
Steve Weinbach?
Here.
Emily Molden? Emily? Okay. Roberto, I mean, I guess he is.
He is out until at least June.
Right. So I guess for all intents and purposes, he's no, because when he comes off of paternity leave.
He has a little bit of time left. We'll deal with that in June.
Okay, okay. Samantha?
Present.
Peter Brace?
Here.
Linda Williams?
She's walking in the door.
Okay. And Seth?
Here.
Seth?
Okay. We've got.
Linda Williams?
Eh.
Okay, the chairman is here, so I'm going to turn it over to her. Madam Chairman, for your information, I've told we don't have to do that script from Zoom anymore. So all we did is the roll call. Jesse and Emily
When did that happen?
are not here.
When did that happen?
Recently.
We're still doing it, we're still doing it at some of the other boards. Where did that come from? The state?
Some of them are, select board's not doing it anymore.
The state said we didn't have to?
Yeah, apparently as long as you take roll.
Would you like to keep doing it?
Nope.
Okay, so
I'm happy.
for the record, Jesse Bell and Emily Molden are not here. Everyone else, I believe, is in attendance. Did I get everybody? And then from, I will let,
Well,
So Phil is here?
we don't have a quorum yet,
we don't?
but we might. If we get a quorum while we get going,
Now,
then we'll
who's
have to
up
stop
there?
and
Well, while
We have a
we're,
quorum. Who's up there? I see Seth.
we only
I
have
see
5 of us.
Steve.
No, I'm talking about our board, crack.
oh,
crap.
crap.
All right, just
Okay.
looking at our board. So
Why don't we do the staff for Harbor Plan? Because I see all of our familiar faces up there. Jeff Carlson.
I'm here.
If you can read them.
Jack, I see Jack.
Yep.
Are you here, Jack?
I see Kim.
Yep, he's here. He can't find his mute button. But
Funny.
Kim's here too.
She's right.
All right, I see Steve.
Kristen, we have Kristen.
I'm
Yep.
here, thanks. Hi.
37. Allison and Dak and Alan.
Dak is here.
Yep.
Hello, here.
Who am I missing? Is Sam up there somewhere?
Yep. She's the next. Then we have Allison and Alan.
So Jesse and Emily are missing?
Correct.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right.
Do we have Tara Riley?
Nope, she is knee deep.
Is what?
She's knee deep in razor clams right now.
Okay,
I never collected those shells.
okay, well, Linda, it's all yours.
Okay, but I don't have to do that anymore. And Peter sent out 2 sets of minutes.
Yep.
Anybody have any comments on the minutes?
I think they're fine. Is that it for all the catch up, Peter?
No,
No.
I'm waiting to hear back from Kim whether we had a July 10th meeting or not. I couldn't find it on the YouTube, but we did talk a lot about it on the July 6th meeting.
That may have been our Mattocket
We-
one, wasn't it?
We had a meeting on July 10th.
Yeah,
Did we?
Yes, I have it in my notes here.
But I think that's the Mattakit one. Was that not the Mattakit one when we were at the Admiralty?
No, it was, I have
Oh,
meeting,
August.
meeting in the trailer on July 10th.
Okay,
Okay, but there's nothing on YouTube.
All right, I'll see what I can do. Track it down.
I'll look for it. Maybe it should be in my recordings. So
I have
I'll look for it and see. Maybe it didn't get up on the YouTube.
I probably have, if that one exists, then I'll have June. And there might be a couple more, then I'll be caught up.
okay,
Okay.
cool. Because I have notes on a lot of them, Peter, if you don't.
Okay, you're writing those.
Okay, I'll move to adopt the 2 minutes that we're looking at, which
Okay.
is,
July,
what is the dates here, Peter?
July 6th.
Yeah.
And March 18th.
July 6th and March 18th.
yeah, if we can keep relatively
Okay.
current while you're just sort of catching up as you go.
Okay, so I'll move that I looked at those meetings.
Yeah.
I think they're fine, so really nice job, Peter. Thank you.
As usual, he's the writer.
So I
So
have, that's
Phil made a motion
that would be
to
a motion.
approve both of them as submitted. Is there a second? Anybody up there?
Second.
I'll give it to Seth. All those in favor? Phil,
Aye.
Peter,
All right.
Seth,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
and myself. Great. Did we already approve the agenda?
No.
Oh, somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Phil
moved.
made a motion to approve the agenda. Any second up there?
Second.
Steve seconded. All those in favor, Phil,
Aye.
Peter,
All right.
Seth,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
myself. Okay, discuss the issues and recommendations, and we have Leah here today. So you have more notes, I see.
I do have some more
You
notes.
see, we can see the notes here on her hard copy. You can't.
A lot of notes.
There are some crack members online, but we
You
don't
don't have a
have
quorum.
quorum right now,
Okay.
so, they may have some input as well.
Okay, so we'll roll.
Okay.
Is that all right with everybody if Leah just keeps going?
I think if we could get, before maybe Leah starts, Kim to put it up on screen and catch us back up where we were.
Yep, I'll put up coastal resiliency. So first we'll work on coastal resiliency, finish this one up hopefully today, and then ideally move into boating and navigation. So I will bring this up now. And Peter, I did just send Haley that YouTube from July 10th.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay,
Have a
so
minute.
Alan is going to kick it off. I'll take notes.
Because I think, Kim, if I'm not incorrect, we ended up with regulatory updates.
Exactly, we did. Yep.
Okay, that's where my notes stopped.
Yep.
Okie dokie.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So yeah, as a refresher, this is we're trying to given that the previous version of the harbor plan did not have a coastal resilience section, right now we're going to, I guess, incorporate regulatory updates, or as we work towards what would be included in a coastal resilience section in our current harbor plan, as we're in the regulatory update section. So I guess we'll start this off. So one of our recommendations is to explore opportunities to modify regulations to promote resiliency and facilitate adaptation. And as part of this, to explore and a bunch of regulations, which I'll, I guess, start reading. Modify zoning bylaws and regulations, considering adaptive zoning, allowing modifications as conditions change. 2, stricter requirements in environmentally sensitive areas. 3, preventing 2-level basements with bigger footprints than zoning allows for above ground. 4, encouraging resilient designs. 5, preventing construction in coastal resilience plan defined high or moderate risk areas. 6, offering regulatory relief for coastal resiliency focused building changes. And 7, basing building regulations on FEMA rules, developing prioritizing green infrastructure where appropriate, new building regulations based on the Massachusetts coastal flood risk model.
Did you say 6 or 7? Because I only have 6 on here.
Yeah, I'm looking at the numbering. We have 2 5s. So there are 7 total. And so any comments on that? That was a lot of kind of bylaws right there. Any I guess Seth. Or...
That's,
Hi, thank you. So the first comment is, I know in some of our regulatory reviews, we're trying to prevent construction in higher moderate risk areas. And I think that is beneficial in some sense, but it's not a one size fits all. Like, we have to talk about what type of construction we're talking about. Is this single family homes or accessory dwellings, or is this critical infrastructure like needed for the public's use? So I think we need to be more clear about that. And then secondly, I think prevention is one half of the coin, and incentivization of building elsewhere is the second half of the coin. So there are some opportunities on lots where people have the ability to build outside those areas and they can be incentivized for doing that. And there's some where they can't and we have to deal with it. But we need to look at kind of like both strategies for success. And then the last thing, and it relates to something that's all through this section, is we received some comments at the Conservation Commission during our last regulation update hearing about the MCFRM model. And I'm not a modeling specialist, but some people in the community feel like that is not a great model. I don't know what our staff or crack representatives' opinions of that model is, but if that's not a good model, should we be using other models, or should we be sticking to that model because that's what the CRP says? So love to hear the input on that. Thank you.
Can I just, sorry, Rachel, Madam Chairwoman, through you.
Yeah.
Before I lose the thought on Seth's point, I guess we felt about that, that what the land council was suggesting about leaving it vague and choosing whichever one made the most sense at the time, we thought that that was too vague, and that we should have a standard that we adhere to, that we base our regulations off of. We can't just say, well, this one looks good, let's go this time. We need to have one, whether it's going to be NOAA or the MC one. We want one specified.
wasn't it?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Hang on one second, Seth. Wasn't it the last meeting that we brought up using NOAA and not this one?
Yeah, it was brought up, or there was some suggestions to not use a specific model at all, but I sort of agree with Pete that you can't have a regulation that's vague. So in the scientific environment, it may be better to use certain models in some circumstances, but in a regulatory environment, there needs to be a standard. So we have to tell people what to use, and we have to pick that, whether it's the MCFRM or NOAA or what. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what we're picking, but we have to pick something, I think, in order for people to understand what the requirement is. So thank you.
Is that Rachel's hand that's up there?
Yes.
Rachel? I can see them, but I can't see their names.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to just second what Seth said, which is that I completely understand protecting environmentally sensitive resources and, preventing construction in areas where it's not logical. I do have concerns about making it a one size fits all. And I think my biggest concerns are protecting public access and protecting public infrastructure. And I, don't have the perfect solution for addressing the, how to pull those out of the existing regulation constraints. But I think it's worth considering. And then the other thing I would say is that there's been a lot of talk recently about the MCFRM, and almost feel like, and this is just my opinion, so take it or leave it, but I almost feel like we should table it until we all get a little bit more educated about it. We have done a little bit of diligence and did talk with Woods Hole Group. And I know Leah has set up having them come to a crack meeting to describe, and or address people's concerns. I think it's just important not to speculate until we have a really full understanding of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah had her hand up. You got something to say
Yeah,
here.
I just wanted to follow up with what Rachel just said. I reached out to Woods Hole Group, who was the company that made this model. And he sent me a long email kind of explaining the model more into detail, and then also the concerns that I think it was Ilex sent to Concom regarding the MCFRM. The biggest misconception is that the MCFRM is not a sea level rise
Right.
projection or model. It takes sea level rise into consideration, but it's not projecting sea level rise. So that's a big one. They also suggested that rather than calling out the model or models themselves, to use the best available science that's from a governmental, reputable governmental agency or something like that. So that's what they suggest. But like Rachel had said, I invited Kirk to the next crack meeting. I need to talk to Peter once we make the agenda, and he will talk about the whole model and then address all the concerns that we have just recently been hearing about the model.
I think that makes a lot of sense, but NOAA is a federal agency. So, and they are constantly updating their information.
Yeah, they generally update sea level rise projections
Yeah.
about every 5 years or so.
So I think, so we could table that one mention of this, and we'll get more information as we move on. Do you have anything else on this section? I see notes.
There are notes. I don't know if you wanted to go through all
Go.
of them, but so at our last crack meeting, the committee had talked about trying to, at least for the coastal resilience part of this update, to point to the CRP as much as possible. Whether to put the page number, or if it's an online document, a hyperlink within it. One of the committee members did have concerns about the one that says implement policy for town to take over flooded areas, provide relocation. So instead of having that word, just point to the CRP. There, it is a high priority within the CRP. It's number 1-4, the town to develop a relocation plan. So to put that in there.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Just to,
Yeah, Peter?
I think the discussion was, we didn't like the term retreat. Right?
Doug brought that up
Okay.
About retreat, but
Relocation sounds better. Retreat is, I don't know, either way you're moving, so.
Okay.
and then it was touched on the first part, but modifying zoning bylaws and regulations. So again, that is another coastal resilience plan recommendation. Number 1-2, to update zoning bylaws to encourage resilient design and limit investment in areas of high coastal risk.
Okay.
And then I know Jesse at the last meeting had talked about if we can somehow, through like a bylaw or some sort of regulation, we talked about like how private property owners kind of, they're all siloed. So if there is a bulkhead that extends, from one property across consecutive properties, to somehow, I don't know what the wording would be, but
Consistency.
yeah, have consistency with height requirements.
Yeah. That makes sense. You don't want a weak spot like we have at 46 or whatever it is over there on the eastern.
Yep, so that's just what I have and what the committee had come up with for the regulation part.
Okay, anything else on this section? Okay.
I would probably step in to point the committee towards one of the recommendations that I guess the next one after it was as science-based triggers for policy updates. This is a feedback that we that we got from both public as well as through discussion, and I guess wanted to see what the committee's take on that in terms of like, does this that does seem a very general statement. Does it seem, I guess, too reactive instead of proactive? Who would be, sorry, and these are some of Dak's comments as well, so I'll kick it to him for this as well. Dak?
Thanks, Alan. I didn't mean to cut you off or anything. Yeah, basically, I'm assuming what this comment meant was pairing policy with implementation for hitting some actual measured benchmark to then have a policy triggered after that. Specifically, the first thing that came to my mind was, does this seem too reactive in terms of proactive, which Alan just said? And mainly, it would be, I think, a preference to do this based on existing data sets rather than assigning a new data collection process. That way there's a long history of data to compare this to. But is that a type of action that the town would be interested in foreseeing?
Well, I think, Dak, the word triggers is reactive. Something happens and then you got to do something. I think the whole point of this is to do something before you have to do, before something happens. So maybe just changing the word triggers. I don't know how anybody else feels, but that seems reactive to me. Seth?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I've talked about this before in other forums, but our regulations are not necessarily science-based, they're science-informed, but there's other important pieces of information that helps those regulations get put into place as well. If, like, for instance, in the CONCON, the wetland regulations, Nantucket local regulations, if they were 100% science-based, our buffer zone setbacks would be hundreds of feet. That's just not physically possible on Nantucket. Our coastal resilience areas would be hundreds of feet inland as well. So we take the scientific data and the modeling that is available to us, that's the science information, and because we live on an island, have to put that through a lens of policy as well. And we're trying to create good regulations that are both science informed and realistic for Nantucket. But I think the informed versus based is maybe a minutia change for some people, but for me, it's very important because it's emphasizing there's multiple feedback sources for good regulations.
Well said. Thank you.
Any other comments on this?
Can we invite members of the public to comment as they go along?
Do we have members of the public up there?
We have someone right behind you.
Oh, I know. He's here. Are you referring to a particular section?
No, I'm going, I'll say something, I'll ask if I can talk.
Okay. He's had his own go around with the Concom. Twice. 3 times. Okay, my only question about that first paragraph is that that's a lot to shove into one paragraph. I didn't know if you should separate them out, so they're standalone sentences as opposed to just all jumbled into one paragraph. And then maybe we can elaborate on each one of the numbers, or I don't know how anybody feels about that.
They're gonna refine it when when the meeting's over. They're gonna take it back to their little cave and refine it and bring it back to us looking pretty.
Yeah.
So these are their rough notes of what we're saying, so that it's not gonna look like that. Am I right, you guys?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate.
Okay, because it's just a lot of numbers in one paragraph that should be all standalone. Okay, anything else in this section? Leo, you got anything else in here?
Not right now.
Anybody, who's here from CRAC? You're here.
I'm here, Tim Brain, Christy Kickham until he has to leave, Rachel Freeman and Abby DiMolina.
Do any of you guys from CRAC have anything else to add to this section? I don't see any hands up. I can't see with the little guys on the top. Okay, are we ready to move to the next section? Anybody? Comfortable?
Go.
Go. Section 6.
Section 6, or there's actually more in that section in terms of like developing coastal resilience districts at town level with specific policies addressing different risks of exposure.
Okay.
Also, updating wetlands regulations, in addition to including the MCFRM to encourage resilient designs, prohibit development of bluffs, dunes, and beaches, limit pool installation, prevent construction in coastal resilience plan to find high or moderate risk areas, or prioritize green infrastructure where appropriate. Enforce laws and regulations to ensure compliance. So yeah, I guess we kind of just covered two ones with, I guess, coastal resilience districts, as well as, I guess, wetlands regulations that do a bunch of things. Do we have comment on those?
Well, back to the education issue again, that comes up every single section. Education, education, education. You can't highlight that enough. Anybody have any comments on the rest of this yet?
I want to say something about education, but this has to be refined. If it's coming up in every single section, then there's got to be some sort of recommendation that encompasses all of it.
Well, this is probably the best way to put it. Conduct education outreach to ensure awareness of laws and regulations. We've talked about
Okay.
giving it, having pamphlets at the Marine Department, handing them out when people come in for the anchorage, handing them out in Mattocket, handing them in the boat basin, all that stuff. So that's really the objective, is to get the word out to people. Anything else on that one section? Okay.
Okay, then I can, I guess, implement policy for town to take over flooded areas, provide relocation with high priority for the town to develop a better, a relocation plan as noted in the coastal resilience plan. And the other ones are, did I just read? Relocation's better than they're cheap. And I think everything else is okay. I think after that, that does conclude that section. So I guess for number 6, for community involvement in the planning for climate change.
Hold on a second. Steve, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. The implement policy for town to take over flooded areas, that's pretty broad too. Are you talking about private property? I mean, if someone's property down on Easton Street starts flooding consistently, are we talking about the town taking that over and finding a place to relocate that house?
And also,
I don't think you're gonna get eminent domain that way.
Right, so that whole statement in that paragraph just seems very, very vague to me.
I think the word take over is going to cause people's heads to blow off.
Right, and it says implement policy. So what agency is going to implement that policy?
well, it kind of happened, it's kind of happening with the Concom expanding buffer zones around salt marshes, because
We haven't done that yet.
haven't done it yet, but they're thinking about it, and they're thinking about what happens when the water comes and moves that boundary inland. So that's, to me, that seems like some of the thinking. They're thinking about what might be coming. So,
Yeah, I understand.
how do you make the leap from, okay, this new land is flooded, so
We're taking
we
it
as the
from you.
town, we're taking it. I think
Yeah,
it's a big leap that people aren't gonna like.
How about working with property owners on,
Maybe we should investigate policy for town to take over flooded instead of implement.
I would take the word take over out. I would say work with private property owners. Jeff?
I think you could simply reduce that whole paragraph down to say, support the development of a strategic retreat and relocation plan. Because that's a goal identified in the coastal resiliency plan.
Yeah.
I think that's much better.
And that covers everything we're talking about there without making it sound like
Or Big Brother's coming for you.
people are coming to take people's property, because I don't think that's.
I was just a
And
little
we-
concerned with that
Not
section. Thank you.
Private property owners at all, if we put that kind of language in here,
No.
take over.
Yeah, that's the recommendation that the crack committee would like to take out, and
Yeah.
then what Jeff just said, put in instead, the town develop a relocation plan. Yeah.
Agreed. Thank
Okay, I
you.
think word on that one. Anything else on this section? Okey-dokey, number 6.
Number 6, community involvement in planning for climate change. And this I guess section speaks to the argument of making decisions based on public decision making, or as I guess as well as expert led approaches, and kind of the balance in there. So incorporating community science, so our recommendations are to incorporate community science into monitoring initiatives, as well as to increase collaboration with on-island groups involved in coastal resiliency and adaptation, with I guess a bunch of examples. Any comments on that?
Linda?
I have two comments on that section. I would suggest adding in producing some sort of informational guides for property level resilience. So a lot of property owners contact me to see what they can do on their property to, you know, make it more resilient from flooding or erosion or whatnot. So citizens are looking for a type of roadmap, that they can do on their property. And then also, I think we should add in to this section, either reaching out or working with the environmental justice areas on island, and, you know, whether we have a committee of them or something, they need to be at the table during these planning events.
Who's that up there? Jess? Oh, Jesse's here.
Yeah, sorry, I came 15 minutes late. I don't under the reference to land bank with housing crisis. That just seems a little bit off topic. So I'm just wondering how that fits in with this
Well, it doesn't really fit in with
section.
you at all.
Huh?
Doesn't really fit in with you at all unless you're doing a co-buy with the land, the housing trust. You're not in the business of housing.
Right, but I don't know how that relates to coastal resiliency and adaptation and the land bank, and just seems out of context.
Yeah, I take the with housing crisis out of there. There's no bearing on that.
Do we need any of the examples?
Hmm?
Do we need any of those examples?
Probably not. To take everything in the EG out.
Okay, can do.
I feel like examples always turn into limiters at some
Yes,
point.
when you start listing stuff by the fact that you've listed stuff, it works the same way in the zoning bylaw. If you get too specific in the zoning bylaw, you by rote leave other stuff out.
Yeah.
So it's best not to do that. But I don't understand what community science, am I missing something? What's the phrase community science as opposed to science-based or something along those lines?
It's getting the community involved in helping collect data.
Citizen science.
Citizen science is another word for it.
Yeah, the word community just didn't make any sense to me. You might want to put in, I like the citizen science.
I think they're moving away from citizen science so that it's more community science, but
Well, how about,
Someone else
how
can.
about community-based science?
I can talk about this if you want.
Okay,
yeah, so.
go ahead, Seth, you can talk about
Yes.
everything.
There is some groups trying to move away from citizen science so that we're not excluding people who aren't citizens of the United States in scientific monitoring. We all have our different opinions on whether that's valid or not, but in general, there is a difference too, in that citizen science is more strictly that researchers create projects and people of the community just collect the data, whereas community science is more of a co-creation process where expert scientists and lay citizens create the projects and work on them together. So it's a little bit more involved and co-created rather than citizen science.
Well, isn't the word missing here is community-based science?
That's fine. It doesn't.
Yeah, I would add the word base.
Yeah. I will just say too, on a separate point. So I think this overall section is great, but we want to be really clear that what we're trying to inspire here is collaboration, and not bureaucracy. Like, we don't want this section to read that, oh, every time an organization tries to implement a coastal resiliency adaptation, it should go through a town meeting vote, or it should go through a referendum, or it should, be discussed in a big forum. That is great for some things, but not great for everything.
I agree. Anybody else have any comments on this section? Hey. All right. The next one is green versus gray protections.
I think this section kind of spoke to different opinions around what type of measures kind of go in, but between gray representing kind of more concrete, kind of engineered, kind of built structures, whereas green protections being more nature-based. So some of our, and with I guess mixed public support for either ones. So our one of recommendations is in vulnerable areas, conduct site-specific assessments for protections, and then where appropriate, include potential hybrid approaches that incorporate both green and gray measures. Also secure additional funding for natural solutions, as well as oyster reefs, living shorelines, eelgrass restoration, et cetera. Maybe we remove some of the examples, given that examples are limiting as a previous discussion, but conduct monitoring of resilience and adaptation projects to ensure effectiveness and inform future projects. Then create additional pocket parks with native vegetation for stormwater holding, as well as conduct a study to quantify blue carbon storage in eelgrass and marshes.
I'm gonna go right to Leah.
No, wait, I had one thing before it goes out of my head, Madam
Yep.
Chairwoman. Is there any way, sorry,
Oh, no, I don't.
is there any way we can change the title to like nature-based, because you get it? And when you say gray, I didn't know what you were saying.
I don't know
You said
what
it.
the hell is gray. It's just
So
a
if you
hard
could say like
argument.
hard armored or
Yeah,
man-made structure, something that better
Structural.
describes what you're saying, because gray, when you said green versus gray, right away I started thinking of gray water.
I did too.
Sure.
And anyway,
We gotta, whatever we do with this document, when we use language, we have to make it user-friendly, and we have to be able to, somebody like a layperson can come and read it and understand what the hell we're talking about. So I do agree with Peter. Or Leah, before I go to Seth.
I'm just gonna say, on that topic, in the coastal resilience plan, the 40 recommendations, it's either structural, non-structural, or nature-based. So maybe this one could be structural versus nature-based, if that's what this section is about.
Yeah. Because then everybody understands that.
and then, sorry, Seth, I just got one more thing. I can't remember from the original, from the 2009 plan, did we have a glossary just in case there are people who aren't getting it? And is that worth doing?
I think so. We're gonna have addendums undoubtedly, but I think we do need a glossary. Seth?
Thank you. I think it should be nature-based versus coastal engineering, because structural is a little bit too broad, but that's just my opinion. And then for the recommendation to secure additional funding for natural solutions, I think additional funding is good, but we also have to do other things to support that. Like, for instance, to get oyster reefs permitted, the few that we have here on Nantucket took years of effort and like very arcane processes involving, the governor and like crazy things that had to happen. And some things that exist in other states, like thin layer deposition or offshore breakwaters, or all these like potential useful technologies, are considered illegal in Massachusetts. So it's beyond funding. We also have to advocate for more robust alternatives to be available to users.
Right? Peter, you got anything else?
No.
Leah?
I don't. Maybe one suggestion in the, where is it? conduct monitoring of resilience. Just thinking to add funding sources into that, because a lot of times monitoring, obviously costs a lot of money, and sometimes that's not worked into, or long-term monitoring isn't worked into the project itself.
How are you gonna do it if you don't have the funding to?
Right, and that's why a lot of these
Yeah,
projects don't have a lot of
Yeah.
data about them.
Monitoring and maintenance often get missed
Yeah.
for project budgets.
anything ongoing isn't gonna be free,
Not usually.
unless you're doing it altruistically. But how many people are gonna do that kind of regular monitoring without, we have to pay somebody to look at it,
Mhm.
okay? Anything else in this section up there? I don't see anybody else up there, okay?
Okay. Last one, education. So yeah, I guess a recommendation is to map vulnerable locations and make map public accessible online or through other means. Maybe this kind of spoke to, informing people of their coastal resilience risk for property owners. Maybe you can incorporate that. But also develop a townwide map with likelihood of future protection to inform current and future homeowners, and as well as hire an education coordinator for coastal resiliency and natural resource projects with science background, and encourage property owners to take coastal resiliency steps. It's, I guess, kind of vague, but yeah.
We covered various other parts of this so far, and even I think earlier in this particular document, we covered a lot of this as to how to get it out, what kind of thing to print. We've covered an awful lot of this previously, so this is sort of a distillation of some of the stuff we brought up. Steve?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, the Coastal Resilience Committee has done so much work on this. Rather than go into detail on education here, couldn't we just say something, in our plan is that we highly recommend people look at the Coastal Resilience Plan to get the information they need on this topic?
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chairman.
Peter?
So, yeah, Steve, Mr. Landeck is, well, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee has worked on this a lot. And we've been working with a realtor to help them improve what potential buyers learn before they buy. They're required to inform about properties, as long as they have the information. There should be a way to, in the plan, a recommendation that points to the Coastal Resilience Plan or some way that makes that happen.
Definitely, but we also talked, we mentioned about the boats, the harbor, the this, the that, the this, and we know finding out who owns property on the shoreline in the harbor is easy. I just go to the GIS and I get it, and we can always do a direct mail to all those who own property in Hither Creek, as well as around the harbor. And because those are fairly large, as you get further out of town, those are large pieces of property. And we can have a direct impact on those guys as to what they should and shouldn't do and all the efforts that we're making. Leah, you had your hand up?
Yep, just a couple comments. And the one that says encourage property owners to take coastal resilience steps, I would just add and how to do it, like,
Yeah.
and then what Peter had just said, educate real estate agents and prospective home buyers. Creating materials for the environmental justice community, so, having those translated and potentially have some short videos that, for people that may not know how to read English, and then creating a professional kind of like how-to handbook for, this kind of goes with the property owner resilience, but yeah, a couple suggestions.
Jeff, did you have anything to add there?
No, I do think ultimately, since education's kind of a bullet with all of the areas, that having some sort of synthesized, public outreach plan as part of the implementation. Because I think there's gonna be if you did each section differently, you'd obviously be duplicating efforts a lot of times.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else on that section? Hey, Dave, you've been very quiet today, Dave.
This time is coming.
Doing a lot of planning.
Are you getting to boating navigation and dredging? I'm guessing will be a lot more.
Yes, I'm sure we'll be next. Gonna be there. All right, so the rest of it, I thank you for this. The CRP,
Yeah.
project.
So below is there are a series of projects from the CRP within the bounds of the harbor planning area, and so we have Leah's updates of where those projects are along, and so wanted to, I guess, open up or take the opportunity to open up to the committee. Are there opportunities for our harbor plan to either promote maybe to promote some of these projects, to I guess smooth over certain roadblocks, or maybe I guess incorporate certain recommendations, such as, I guess Kristen has some of, like, making sure that public access is maintained during the implementation of projects such as, like, the downtown neighborhood flood barrier, as you scroll down, Kim. But yeah, I guess I don't know if we wanted to go. So some of these projects within the harbor planning areas, I guess, update zoning bylaw. We covered some of the zoning updates. We also covered some of the education outreach measures. But in terms of some specific projects like steamboat wharf resilience, do we, like, I guess wanted to open up to the committee of how did they or had they taken a look at some of these at some of the updates on some of these project statuses and had ideas, or wondering if I should, I guess, walk us through each one individually, or wondering how the committee wants to approach some of these projects within the planning area, because these are ones that, as we write this section, we want I think they're going to be relevant because they are within our harbor plan area, but also they're all in very different stages of their progression. So,
Madam Chairman.
Peter?
Alan, just, if you haven't already, just keep in mind the life of the current plan, the plan that we're updating.
Yeah.
What its life is going to be. And I know I've said this before, but compared to the life of the CRP, which goes out decades. So
yeah.
Just have to make sure which project is relevant during the time that the updated plan is going to exist. And then we can always make recommendations to the next update, but that'll be the next committee's thing.
How does anybody want to handle this list?
I think this is a little bit beyond the scope of what we're trying to do. I mean, we've got a whole thing to plow through, and
We can refer to this in our plan.
Right,
Because
but-
whatever happens here is gonna be linked to you guys. So I don't think we need to go through this.
I think
Good to
it's
know,
almost
but-
something that can be brought back to the implementation group
Yeah,
for this.
yeah.
If there's action that is specifically needed to be
Yeah.
taken for a project at that point.
It's a living document, so.
as they say.
I think it's something to keep track of going forward.
Yeah.
There probably should be something in the far right column that says refer to or be in contact with the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
Advisement on this, because whatever we write in that middle column may change depending on what's coming along. But it's good to have it in there so that there's a reference to it, because this is what's in the plan. This is what we say we want to do, but then conditions may change. So
I think the Steamship Authority for one and the Highline are on this fairly quickly. I don't think the steamship's gonna wait 10 years to deal with it.
they will
Yeah.
be 10 years before they get done whatever they're going to do. They're just going to. I mean,
It's
I
gonna
may
need
be,
to start
I
now.
may be not giving the correct information, but their general manager, Bob Davis, when he talked to us, and that was a while ago, said that they were still working on completing the Woods Hole project. And then they're gonna be looking at us. So I know it's a ways out. Just don't know where they are in the process.
Yeah, I heard it was a little more
I
recent.
talked to him and they put in a grant for the planning of the Nantucket terminal.
Yeah, I knew they were doing something right now.
So they're trying to start the planning process, but you know, with permitting and construction and all that, it's definitely years out. I would suggest maybe for the harbor plan, if I know Alan like created a map that kind of showed the areas where the projects were, or if you just listed the projects. I wouldn't put project statuses in because those are gonna change.
Yeah.
But maybe just list the CRP recommendations that are within the harbor plan area and then say like, you know, go to the CRP for further information about these projects. Or
Yeah.
recommendations.
Yeah, without getting too elaborate.
Yeah.
And also speak with the coastal resilience
Yes.
coordinator
And
for clarification, because it'll be over time and a different committee and maybe a different person in that position, but that position I can assume is going to continue to exist as we go forward, and that person they'll know everything that we've done up to the point, and whoever it is, hopefully it's Leah, will be able to help whichever item.
It sort of indicates to you that you're here for life. Yeah.
She's young.
Job security.
Phil?
I think Leah raises an interesting question, though, that if the steamship authority is gonna be applying for stuff, with, you know, are the people in Boston gonna be looking at our harbor plan, see to what extent the harbor plan is a factor in their analysis?
For grants?
Probably not for grants, for some of the permits and licenses, they may be, but there's not a statutory obligation to review the harbor plan for grant applications.
We can always include it.
Or they can always come to the town and request like a letter of support or something.
I guess my only thought is while we're creating this framework, we might wanna just keep an eye on the fact that somebody might be looking at this that could take something the wrong way or the right way or whatever, what we're trying to do.
I think the tough part with that too is we don't know what they're going to be proposing.
Yeah.
Right? It's totally under development. I would hate to tacitly say that that's what we want if it turns out it's not what we actually want.
Yeah,
Or maybe we should find out what they.
Well, I don't think they
well,
know.
that's what they're after the
Okay.
grant for, is to develop the plan, and then we can sort of see, okay, that works or that doesn't work, or the HDC is gonna have a heart attack, you know, there's any.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of public.
There's gonna be a lot of process.
Okay.
And I offered to be an advisor on their project, so that
Okay.
there
So
is.
you'll be
So then you're here for life.
right,
So
you'll be-
there's town collaboration and
Okay.
input, because we have another project on Easy Street, and obviously those two projects need to be cohesive.
Yeah.
So the communication is open between the
Okay,
town
good.
and station.
Okay.
Dave does have his hand up now.
Okay. Who's got it? Oh, Dave, your hand is up finally.
Well, I didn't want you to think that I wasn't paying attention. To digress back to last meeting, Kristen or Kim, were you able to reach out to those other entities to explain to them that we were in this process, like the steamship, the High Line, the Coast Guard, and those guys?
I have not reached out to them yet. I don't know if anyone else has. We will be talking more about boating and navigation, so we could talk more about that, but I haven't reached out to them yet.
Okay, thanks.
As we had brought up the yacht club, both yacht clubs, we brought up the Coast Guard, we brought up, town entities, you know, anybody involved, NIR in particular.
Yeah, I thought we had wanted to get the committee through those sections before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we go after
stakeholders.
them. Okay. All right, we ready to go to Dave's favorite subject? Boating.
Okay, thank you.
Safety and navigation. Oh, there we all are.
I'm gonna.
Thanks, everyone.
Anything else? When you come up with stuff, just email Jeff
Okay.
and we'll put it into the mix every time.
Yeah.
And you're welcome to come every 2 weeks.
Thank you
No.
for the invitation.
No,
Thank you, Leah, and everyone else for joining.
Okay.
Yeah,
bye.
thanks, crack guys.
All right, so Allison is the lead on boating, harbor operations, and safety and navigation. Some of this, we tried to keep it from overlapping too much with the other section that Jack did, but there might be some overlap as we're going through. So let me launch that document. And I don't know, I think you guys have all met Allison. Allison works with us at Urban Harbors and been at some of the public meetings.
Hi, everyone.
Yep.
So for this section, as Kim said, we're going back to sort of the format that you've, I think, had for some of the prior sections you've been reviewing. And yeah, there is some overlap in different sections. And so I think we're going to talk about sort of how to structure certain topics. But for at least this section, wanting to make clear that what I've highlighted in yellow is recommendations from the old plan that have not been discussed by this committee yet. Things that are not highlighted are, and you'll see that there's notes available, those were items that were discussed in the commercial waterfront section.
Because I know the public access back to the piers, boat ramps, travel lifts. I mean, we've gone over that ad nauseum, but that's all going to be part of this whole section.
Yeah, and same more well will be in this section, but we're at least for the new material not going to be covering that at this time just yet. That'll be coming later.
All right, start at the top.
Yep. So again, going back to the 2009 plan as to where we stand on these recommendations, does the committee want to retain them? First one, are we going through the goal and objective level, or are we going straight to recommendations?
I would assume the objective level, because that's the stuff that you pulled out of the old plan.
Correct. Yep.
Well, you're asking us if they should stay in or stay out, so I think we should probably just start there.
Yep. And some of these highlights, I think that's right, because some of these will be things you've talked about before, and some of them will be things you haven't discussed yet. So the objective 2, to ensure that both the number and size of boats does not exceed the carrying capacities of either harbor.
I think we all agree that should stay in. That's an ongoing battle, Dave.
Yeah, it's for all intents and purposes, it's been completed and it is capped at 2,100 moorings. So that's the carrying capacity. That's the current carrying capacity, barring any approval by the Corps of Engineers of any additional mooring field. So that is the carrying capacity that's established.
And Dave, is that as it's expanded right now? Because I think it's expanded too far. Personally, it's expanded too far and into the eelgrass, and it's causing a problem. Doesn't seem to be a happy medium at the moment. I thought they expanded the anchorage too far. It's up into 0.1 and 2, and I mean, it's just everywhere.
Right. Well, there's regulations that prohibit anchoring past first point, except for emergency situations. But the mooring fields, the delineation of the mooring fields maps are on charts in the old plan, and those, as I believe, are still current. Has there been creep? I'm sure there has been. When you get into the situation of moorings in eelgrass, we need to, when we get to that section, we need to, and Shab is talking about this all the time, is eco-friendly moorings, using a door moor anchor instead of a mushroom, rubber bands instead of roads, which don't use chains. So those are all things that need to be recommended in this plan to move forward for implementation to stop doing damage to the eelgrass.
Is that a list that you guys have?
It's part of. I guess the real answer is no. But in the previous plan, those were recommendations, but they need to be expanded and talked about more.
That's what that's what I'm after. Are you getting that point, Allison, that the simple statement isn't enough now? We gotta be
Correct,
more
yep.
specific with Dave's list and whatever expansions happened since the previous plan. And be very specific about it, because if somebody's reading it from the public, they're gonna see that they have an alternative to those god awful mushroom things.
Right. And
Right.
also, I don't mean to jump in here, but you chastised me for being quiet. So, the other thing too is Urban Harbors, has the experience and expertise of dealing with numerous other communities that I'm sure this has been a discussion. And we need, we need, I guess, you know, the ability to have talking points of what other communities are also looking at for alternative mooring systems.
So in essence, we gotta keep this section, but we gotta blow it up.
Right. We just need to, we've got to make it a more actionable item. I think that a lot of the discussion in 2007
Right.
through 9 was carrying capacity. And now I think the discussion needs to be centered around protection of eelgrass and how do we do a better job at managing what we have.
Steve?
Yeah, and while we're talking about carrying capacity, I think we would want to make some kind of a recommendation that the Marine Department gets much more proactive in seeking out and taking care of illegal moorings, because there are a lot of illegal moorings out there now. So we may be capped at 2,100, but there are a lot more than 2,100 in the harbor that get dumped every year.
Well,
Yeah, that's the point. I've seen them creep, and
well,
creeping is bad, and
Guys are selling boats, new boats, and I'm not going to say who, but they sell new boats and they put a mooring in. There's no name on it. There's no number on it, you know, and the boats don't have permit stickers on them. And I think the town needs to be much more proactive about monitoring this and doing something about it. I know there are other locations, not on Nantucket, that if there's an illegal mooring, the Marine Department there will actually physically remove it.
yeah, Steve's exactly right. They need to be more proactive in a enforcement and inspection role. I've had several people approach me in the last year or so saying that, you know, there's really no problem, really no problem with them putting in a mooring. A mooring company puts the mooring in, and like Steve says, there's no name or number on the ball. There's no sticker on the boat. And if you're not going to have any of that, then why have a program anyway? But, you know, it's written in the bylaw and the regulations that an illegal mooring can be hauled at the discretion of the harbor master, but they just need to be more proactive in doing that and going through more than once or twice a season and getting rid of some of these. So enforcement is key here.
okay, Dave, Peter had his hand up.
Yeah, two things, Dave, maybe think of one thing and then I had another. Sheila Lucy, our harbor master, is on vacation now, but she should be in here and be alerted to this, or someone should reach out to her. If this is the problem, then someone needs to call her and say, hey, this is happening. I'm sure she's aware of it, but you know, mention of it in the plan is a good thing. And also, we should make a reference here in this yellow section to the eventual creation of the eelgrass management plan, that's coming, and
yeah,
so that we take into account our 2,100 moorings,
Impact.
their impacts, the illegal moorings impacts,
and just stupid behavior.
And at our last SHAB meeting, was it our last SHAB meeting or no, at the last crack meeting, I think. One of the two sets of minutes, my brain is scrambled with doing too many minutes, but Sheila was talking about how the cap isn't 2,100, it's 1,800. Maybe it's gone up, but she seems to think it's 1,800. Does that sound right?
Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
is 1,800 in the dedicated mooring fields. The way you get to 2,100 is the issuance of permits to waterfront property owners.
Right.
So those aren't included in the cap. Those are people that are going to have a mooring in front of their house on Easton Street or Halbert Avenue or
Yeah.
Pulpus or whatever, that we tried to be creative in freeing up numbers within the 1,800 for the people who don't have waterfront access. Like Steve and I were talking a couple meetings ago about the guy who parks in his own driveway and keeps his dinghy on the beach in front of his house. You know, that was a way to increase the number of moorings in the general anchorages areas, the 7 or 9 mooring fields that are approved. So that's how you get from 18 to 2,100. And they have to have deeded waterfront rights. They have to present documents for that. If the house is sold, it's reviewed again. And it was a way to get more people out there. The person at Hobart Avenue or Pulpus or Quays or Monomoy is going to have a mooring out in front of their house, their multi-million-dollar house, one way or the other. So this was a way to free up permits for the folks that didn't have that luxury.
Okay.
And as far as, let me just touch on Peter's other point. As far as Sheila is concerned, I'm hoping, and I talked to her recently, actually, I was on the boat with her when she was going on vacation, but I'm assuming that she's on the distribution list for these meetings, Kim.
Yeah, she's on the list and I did email her before this meeting, but sounds like she's on vacation. I guess she's not able to attend, but
Right. Well, she needs to also be available to weigh in on this. And this is this is an issue that we've had, with her attendance of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board meetings, et cetera. And it also is one of the strong impetus for me to put forth recommendations to remove her from the police department and make her back as her own standalone entity, because she's being told different things by different people, and she needs to be dramatically involved in this process.
Well, we've all said it before that it should never have been taken away from the Marine Department as a standalone entity. But the police department have no interest in this and they don't know what they're doing with it.
Well, I'll sum it up real quickly. It has to do with money.
Yeah.
It was a money situation, and here we are. But Shab
is now by itself because it's necessary.
Shab voted unanimously to put forth to this board, this planning committee, a recommendation to remove it as an action item. And I know Jeff has some other, probably more recent information, but like I said, Shellfish Advisory Board had voted unanimously to move forward with that action.
And then we should approach the Board of Selectmen to put a warrant article in for next year. Period.
It doesn't, it's an administrative issue and it can be done.
No, it has to be the Parks and Rec. We had to put in a budget and everything else just separated out from the DPW type of commingling. This would be having to create under Article 8 its own line item. That's the difference.
The Marine Department has and currently and has always had its own line item, and it has its own line item in this year's budget. So
as a department, no.
That's right. As a Marine Department. You'll see, I just looked at it yesterday. You'll see expenditures for materials and expenditures for labor, and it's still its own entity. It wasn't the annual budget that was a money issue. It was grants and revenue coming in from other sources like the rental moorings, the permit of moorings, and boat excise tax. That was the money that was up for grabs, if you will.
Well, then you
But-
got the embarkation fee and all the rest of that stuff going to the police department.
Exactly. Well, I have recommendations I'm hoping to be approved by the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board to bring forward on that. And I have an implementation section in that and how we get that done for next year's annual town meeting. But I think we beat this section to death.
Okay, so that wasn't sure. We beat that one little thing. We got recommendation number 1. Do you want to go there?
Sure. Can I just follow up, David? Did you have a recommendation on what frequency would be preferred for assessing? You were saying monitoring of illegal moorings
Every week?
every week. So it crops up that often as a problem.
Yeah,
Well, it should be,
August is terrible.
Dave should be saying this, but I guess I've been around here long enough. It should just be a regular thing that who's ever on the water patrolling makes a note of and deals with it.
Yeah.
Should just be part of,
Regular stuff.
we all know Sheila's extremely busy, but it should be something that she's looking out for all the time. Her staff is looking out for. And Dave's got his hand up again.
I think you never took it down. Okay. Okay, anything else on that one thing?
Okay, so on to the former recommendation 1 under this goal. The Department of Marine and Coastal Resources should assess the need to quantify the carrying capacity of others.
I think that's done. I think the carrying capacity is 2,100, and that's what it's going to remain. We're not going to issue. They're not going to issue any more permits than that. If you want a mooring after that, you need to go on the waiting list.
Or they
So
just
no.
think.
Well, what about
I think
all
we
the,
fleshed all that out on the
you know,
on objective 2.
I think when we talk about carrying capacity too, though, we need to talk about the amount of boats that come and drop anchor that aren't on moorings. I mean, there's a
Right.
fair amount too. I mean that, and I don't know if we need to calculate other boats that are in slips and things like that, just as far as carrying capacity. But that does affect the number of boats running around up harbor and safety and things like that. So there are additional boats as part of the carrying capacity that are not on moorings, permitted moorings.
And I think Dave will have something to say about this, but the number of slips are the number of slips. And they all exist and are permitted.
And they're all taken.
And they're all taken, and it's not something where we can go in and say, all right, those slips are closed, so you just have to have the number that's in the slips, know that number, and then, and be okay with that, but the anchoring, I'll let Dave answer that one.
Well, as far as the slips are concerned, you're right. The number of slips at the yacht club is X, the number at Great Harbor Yacht Club is Y, and the town pier is whatever it is. People who tie up at their private docks, it's a number, I don't know. That could all be fleshed out relatively easily if you want to, if you want to go to Steve's point, he's right. What we're talking about is mooring field capacity at 2,100 or moorings at 2,100, but you're right, there's another, I don't know if I remember right, there's something like 30 slips at Nantucket Yacht Club. There's I don't remember how many slips are at the Great Harbor, but that number could be added up, and that would, Steve's right, that would be the carrying capacity. As far as the anchorage is concerned, it's kind of it's obviously based on size and how much room you have between buoy 11 in the channel up to First Point, excluding Hussey Shoal. So that's the anchorage. That's the only anchorage that we have. There has been some discussion about expanding the anchorage up into the deep water off of First Point, but as you can see by the number of large vessels that are anchored outside every year, you're right, we could try to shoot at a number for what the anchorage is, but there's a finite number of space there that they'll fit in.
I think my concern was watching, I don't have a boat anymore, thank God. It's like a hole in the water you pour money into. But I saw a lot of larger boats at anchor up beyond point one or at
Well,
point.
well,
And that's
there's a-
what concerns me.
That it's troublesome and it shouldn't be, but there's a regulation that says that they can't or shouldn't do that.
They do.
Well, then they should be told what we would do years ago is we would go up there and tell them they had to move back into the anchorage. And if there wasn't room in the anchorage, they had to go outside. But again, it's an enforcement issue. So
So,
Peter,
Dave, isn't it that it's where Sheila places them? She tries to place them inside, but they end up how where they're anchored and how the winds and the tides go, it tends to blow them over the line, but then she's taking them in when that area is full of however many boats she puts in there, and then she puts them outside. And then there's a limit of length that you can have on the end of Straight Wharf. So.
Yeah,
on the end of the town convention.
The other thing too is when we go back to the discussion about the carrying capacity, that's a good point that Steve brought up. Also, the number, there's 240 slips in the boat basin, so that number should also be included in the Great Harbor Yacht Club, Nantucket Harbor, Nantucket Yacht Club, etc. I had forgotten that. A lot of people don't anchor. A lot of people don't like to anchor, and that's why you have 125 rental moorings. It's a lot safer for somebody who's coming in here as a transient to hook to a 1,000-pound mushroom and not have to worry about whether their anchor's dragging or not. If I had a nickel for every boat I've gone up there and chased while it was dragging anchor through the mooring field, I'd be a rich man. But anyway.
Yeah, I do know that. Okay, so I think we beat the death out of the objective 2 and recreation, recommended, like, what is that, rec 1? Are we going to rec 2?
So it sounds like some of this has been finalized. So until an assessment of the comparing capacity is completed, Marine and Coastal Resources should continue to cap the number of moorings at approximately 2,100 vessels while maintaining a similar ratio of smaller boats to larger vessels, smaller being less than 26.
Yeah, that 26 feet, there's a couple breakpoints in there as far as size and where they can go and draft a vessel and everything. And that 12 feet to 13 feet to 26 is one level, and then 26 anyway, and it has to do with permitting costs for renewal of the permit. So I think that's complete. That's pretty well finalized. Then the next one, as far as a cruise ship is concerned,
Hang on, before we go there.
Okay.
So recommendation, I don't know, I can say recreation. Recommendation number 2, we don't need to keep.
No, I believe it's finalized. It's pretty well memorialized in how they charge the fee and where they can go. And yeah, it's kind of self-limiting because of size and draft.
I agree. I think we can remove recommendation 2.
Okay.
Yes.
And we get.
I think 26 feet is the magic number because that's the length of the Larians.
Yep. Ours was 18. Okay. Recommendation number 5. There we
All
go.
right, this was memorialized, this was memorialized with an agreement with the Board of Selectmen that's on file that we won't allow any coastal cruise ships in here. Is when Holland America and Carnival Cruise Lines decided that they wanted to come in here. They were going to tender their people from anchoring. They were going to anchor outside. They were going to tender their people inside. And just briefly, I explained to them very simply that what their people were going to remember was sleeping on mats in the high school gymnasium because they weren't going to be able to get back to the ship because of the sea and tide conditions in Nantucket Channel. And they decided they didn't want to come. So we limited this to coastal cruise ships, which is like American Cruise Lines and those guys, which have a capacity of 125 people. It's been memorialized. I don't think it needs to be revisited. It was a very difficult decision process that we went through at SHAB and then through the selectmen. You know, they're limited. They're limited to their size of 125 feet.
How come this says 90% on the completion?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
Where'd that come from, guys? Allison?
That came from notes, I think from the committee, from a spreadsheet.
Yeah,
I bet that was from the original implementation matrix.
It could have been because this agreement has been going on for a while.
Oh yeah,
Doesn't seem-
20 years.
Years.
see,
Yeah.
it's fully complete.
Yes,
Okay, so we can get rid of that one?
I think
Everybody
so.
okay with that?
Yes.
Seth, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I would just say as the MPNEDC rep here, this issue has never been talked about
No.
as something that needs to come back up, so we can get rid of this.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
great.
one of the things that we talked about with Holland, I mean, Carnival Cruise Line Director of Operations was standing in my office, and he was going to bring 1,600 people to Nantucket, and I asked him very, very blatantly, one simple question: where are they going to go to the bathroom? And he looked at me, and I told him, I'm dead serious. We don't have enough public bathrooms for you to bring 1,800 people ashore. And he shook my hand and left. So
I remember when they used to park out there, and I remember watching, because remember as a cliffside, and you remember watching tenders coming back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yep.
And their airflow, they had air, and they were like just whipping. They didn't pay any attention to the speed limits, nothing.
it was unbelievable.
Drag them all in here, and we couldn't even go downtown because they were just populating everything downtown without spending a dime, and it was like, why?
They bring $5 in a clean T-shirt, and they don't change either one.
Yeah.
As far as the fuel, the town encourages the relocation of the current fuel offloading facility. That's been complete. The 2 tanks that you still see there are only for the boat basin's use. One's a diesel tank and one is a gasoline tank. So that's complete. Those tanks have been relocated.
All right, so we can get rid of Rec 2 under to improve harbor safety.
Yes.
We're down to Rec 4.
Just to go back to the cruise ship issue, so there's no concern with the limited size of the cruise ships that come in now. There's no need to revisit the
No.
allowance of those size of vessels.
No, it's on the agreement. So, yeah.
The only thing I might add is just maybe putting in some language saying maintaining the existing agreements and maintaining the status quo, whatever the language you want for that.
That makes perfectly good sense. Also, there's a requirement that they seal their overboard discharges for their pump out. So yeah, that I could come up with some language if it would just clean that up a little bit, that we maintain what we, like Steve said, maintain what we currently have and ensure that they're adhering to the harbor master's inspection for pump out. We would basically go on the ship and inspect their overboard discharges and cable tie them closed, so they just with their engineer, so we made sure that they complied.
All right, we got 2 minutes left, guys.
Yeah,
Let's finish this page.
okay, yeah, just one quick thing, before we start losing people, is that I see that our next meeting is scheduled for, Patriots Day. So 2
We
weeks.
can't have a meeting on that day legally,
So do we want to, is it possible to move that to the next Tuesday from 1 to 2?
which is, no, it's still school vacation week here and where you are. So let's just bag that week. Everybody else is canceling their meetings that week.
Yep,
You're talking about like the 15th,
Yeah, no.
so move to the 22nd.
we can
Yeah.
move to the 22nd.
This, Madam Chairman, if I could, this may be a good place to stop because I, I don't know how the Marine Department got in the business of talking about lighting, except how it would affect navigation. So these next couple of sections about lighting and stuff probably should be kept, but they need to be reworked and updated.
Well, to just quickly bootstrap on that, the Conservation Commission is now, and Seth can back me up on this, has now gotten into lighting on coastal resources. And downlighting or not having lighting or pointing away from the habitats, et cetera, et cetera. So in almost all of our order of conditions, we have a lighting provision when somebody's right there on the harbor or on the marsh.
Oh, I see. Well, that's good to know that somebody else is, the only, I'll give it 5 seconds of background is the only time this is an issue is that when somebody complains about not being able to navigate down Nantucket Channel or navigate within the navigable waters, be it the harbor master or a mega yacht or whoever. And that's the only time that a lighting issue comes up. It's only an issue when it becomes an impairment to navigation. So we probably need to keep this reference to new Concom stuff, and we'll just clean it up to the current situation.
All right, we got to adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Good stuff again, as usual.
I'm sorry, what was the date of the next meeting?
What's the last?
The front page.
April 22 is the next meeting, April 22nd.
Yep.
All right. I'll be in warm North Carolina.
Yeah, and you can chime in from your comfy of your looking out on the water.
So the next thing the next one is objective 5.
Yeah. Or actually recommendation, yeah, objective 5. We haven't finished anywhere near that.
Right.
Okay, so somebody want to make a motion to adjourn at 2:31?
Move.
All right, Peter made that motion, Phil
Second.
seconded. All those in favor, Phil,
Aye.
Peter,
All right.
Seth,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Jesse,
I think she's done.
she's still up there?
Nope.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody.
The chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.